I'm Jennifer, and I'm 58 years old. I work as a dental hygienist, and I've been raising my daughter Lucy on my own since she was 3. Her father left when things got hard, and we've made our way together ever since. Lucy was 11 that spring, a sweet girl with light brown hair that always seemed a little windblown, and eyes that held more understanding than most children her age. We'd been living with my mother for 2 years by then. After my divorce, money had been tight, and Mum had offered us her spare bedroom. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I got back on my feet. But you know how these things go. Months turn into years, and temporary becomes permanent, without anyone quite noticing. My mother was 69, a woman who'd never learned to bend. She'd raised me with strict rules and little warmth, and I suppose I'd hoped that having Lucy around might soften her somehow. But some people are set in their ways, and my mother was carved from stone. That Tuesday started like any other. Lucy had school, and I dropped her off before my morning shift. It was one of those grey spring days when the rain keeps threatening, but hasn't quite decided to fall. I remember Lucy kissing my cheek before she got out of the car, her pink backpack slung over one shoulder, wearing that pink shirt she loved, with the floral shorts that didn't quite match, but she insisted went together. "Love you, Mom," she said, like she did every morning. "Love you more, sweetheart. I'll pick you up at 3. But that afternoon, I got a call from the dentist I work for. His wife had been in a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, but he needed to get to the hospital right away. Could I handle closing up the office? Of course I could. I called my mother to ask if she could pick up Lucy from school. "I suppose," she said in that way that made it sound like an enormous imposition. "But Jennifer, we need to talk when you get home." Something in her voice made my stomach tighten, but I pushed it aside. I had patients to finish with, instruments to sterilize, appointments to reschedule. I didn't get home until after 6. The rain had started by then, a steady spring downpour that turned the streets slick and grey. When I pulled into my mother's driveway, I saw Lucy immediately. She was sitting on the front porch, still in her school clothes, her backpack beside her, soaked through. Her hair was plastered to her head, and she was shivering. I was out of the car before the engine stopped, running to her. "Lucy, baby, what are you doing out here?" She looked up at me with those solemn eyes, and I saw she'd been crying. "My key didn't work, Mom. I've been waiting for you." I tried the door. She was right. The lock had been changed. Something cold settled in my chest. I rang the doorbell, knocked, called out. Finally, my mother came to the door. She didn't open it all the way, just stood there in the gap, her face set in that expression I knew too well. "Mom, what's going on?" "Lucy's been sitting in the rain. Why did you change the locks?" My mother's voice was flat, emotionless. "We need to have a conversation, Jennifer. The family had a meeting. Your brother, your sister, and me. We've all decided that you and Lucy don't live here anymore. You've had 2 years to get on your feet. It's time." I felt the words like a physical blow. A family meeting? Without me? "Mom, you can't just..." Lucy's been sitting in the rain for hours. She's 11 years old. She should have gone to a neighbor's house. She's old enough to figure things out. I looked at my daughter, shivering on the porch, trying so hard to be brave, and I looked at my mother, who couldn't even meet my eyes. In that moment, I understood something I'd been avoiding for years. My mother didn't know how to love, not really, and I'd been waiting my whole life for something she couldn't give. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Understood." Then I turned to Lucy, gathered her wet backpacks, and said gently, "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go." We sat in the car for a moment while I turned the heat up high, trying to warm her. She was still shivering, her teeth chattering. I reached over and took her hand. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. I tried knocking, but nobody answered. I thought maybe Grandma didn't hear me. I didn't know what to do. "You did nothing wrong, baby. Nothing. You hear me." She nodded. but I could see the confusion in her eyes, the hurt. How do you explain to a child that sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest? I drove to a hotel near my work, checked us into a room with 2 beds. We took hot showers, and I wrapped Lucy in every towel I could find, while her clothes tumbled in the hotel dryer down the hall. We ordered pizza from the place across the street and ate it sitting on the beds. The television playing cartoons. Neither of us was really watching. That night, after Lucy fell asleep, I sat by the window and wrote a letter. I wrote it by hand, on hotel stationery, taking my time with each word. I told my mother that what she'd done was cruel, not just to me, but to an innocent child. I told her that Lucy had waited for 5 hours in the rain, cold and scared, because she'd been raised to respect her elders and follow rules. I told her that if this was how family treated each other, then perhaps it was better we weren't part of it anymore. I sealed it in an envelope, and 3 days later, I drove to her house in the early morning and left it at her door. My mother called me that afternoon. Her voice was shaking. "Jennifer, I didn't know she was out there that long. I didn't think." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't think about what it would feel like for her, about what it means to be 11 and locked out of the only home you know." There was silence on the other end. Then, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You should tell Lucy that, not me." She did. Later that week, Lucy accepted her apology with grace, the way she accepts most things in life. But something had shifted in her. She was more careful around my mother after that, more guarded. She'd learned a hard lesson about conditional love. As for me, I found us a small apartment, just 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy. It took every penny I'd saved, and then some. We ate simply for months, and I picked up extra shifts wherever I could. But it was ours. Lucy decorated her room with posters and string lights. We painted the kitchen together, a warm yellow that made even grey days feel brighter. My mother wanted to rebuild what we'd had, but I couldn't go back. We saw her for holidays, for birthday dinners, kept things cordial but distant. My brother and sister eventually apologized too, said they'd just been worried about Mom being taken advantage of. Hadn't really thought it through. I accepted their words, but I didn't forget. Lucy's 16 now, working her first job at the library, saving for college. She's still got that same windblown hair, those thoughtful eyes. She's learned to stand up for herself, to know her worth, to understand that love shouldn't come with conditions. Sometimes she asks me about that day, about why Grandma did what she did, and I tell her the truth. That hurt people, that my mother never learned how to love openly, and that doesn't excuse what happened, but it helps explain it. What I've learned, in these years since, is that home isn't a building or a place. It's not about blood or obligation. Home is where someone looks at you shivering in the rain and says, "Come here, let me help you get warm." It's where someone sees you struggling and reaches out a hand instead of closing a door. That rainy Tuesday taught me something important. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from people who can't love you properly and building something better on your own. It's not easy, and it's not what we're taught family should be, but it's honest. And in the end, that small apartment with the yellow kitchen became more of a home than my mother's house ever was, because Lucy and I built it together with kindness and patience, and the kind of love that doesn't lock doors or change locks or leave children waiting in the rain. That's what matters, not the size of the space, but the size of the heart that fills it.